Hi, my name is Richard Tucker, and I'm running for the uh, Democratic nomination for the District 56 Senate seat. And so I wanted to use this as an opportunity to reach out to people and have a conversation, a little bit like a town hall. And so, in this new way of trying to connect and communicate with people, it's difficult to go door to door. It's difficult, obviously, to hold any kind of a session where we have any kind of an audience or groups of people together. And yet, it's important as we try to find a way to share our message and what we're about and really make a case as to why you should vote for us. And in my case, obviously, vote for me. We have to find new ways to do that. And one of the ways that we are going to try to do that, at least in my case, is to use something called Facebook Live and to try to have a town hall sort of meeting every Thursday at 7 o'clock. The point of that is to take on different topics and have a conversation around those. And over the next 12 weeks, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to really delve into some of the issues that face us in the district and some of the conversations that we really do need to have. And so each week I hope to have a guest to help me narrate and navigate, rather, I guess, the topics and the issues that we want to talk about. So this evening, this is the first one. This is a trial run. And I've asked a friend of mine, Tom Summers, who does this a little bit more often than I do. He has done it both from a perspective of the music industry, which is something that he's passionate about, as well as real estate, and he does it pretty regularly. And so I've asked him to work with me this evening and be the person to ask me questions as we go through this process. And so this evening, what I'd really like to do is kind of lay out a little bit about my background as to why I'm running and some of the things that hopefully are important to me and are important to you, and also give people an opportunity to ask questions if there are questions that come in through the audience. So bear with me a little bit. This is my first run at this, so hopefully you'll have a little patience as well. But I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to connect. These should be about 15 to 20 minutes, maybe a half hour, depending on questions. But I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to chat with you, to hear from you, and to continue to keep this dialogue going. So every Thursday at 7 o'clock is the plan, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more often. So without any further ado, I'm going to invite Tom to join me on the screen, and then I'm going to ask Tom to kind of go through and ask some questions that hopefully are on your mind. And I've asked him to think of some things that he thinks are important, and so we're going to go from there. So I'm going to bring Tom in. And Tom should be showing up here shortly. And there he is.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Richard. Thanks for having me tonight.
So I appreciate you taking the time to help me learn this process because you obviously do this a little bit more often than I do, but also because you and I have had many political conversations over the years, and we're not always on the same page, but we've had great conversations. And so part of that is, I think you're, I don't know if I would ever say typical, but you're a typical voter from the perspective of you have questions about the process and questions about, why are you running and things like that. So I'm going to ask you to just kind of fire away and let's have a conversation.
Okay. But before we get started, I want to just say one thing to all the people that are out listening, other than hello, Jan, how are you? She's watching. So welcome to everybody that's tuning in. Richard's a good man. He's honest, he's hardworking, and he will do what he says he's going to do. He brought me to Coldwell Banker. He was my broker, my manager. It took him 5 years to do it. And I was skeptical from day one. And no, but you stuck in there, you proved yourself, and everything he said he would do for me, he did. And so I can tell you, looking at you in the eye, people, he is the real deal. He's honest. He's actually an honest man who will do what he says he's going to do. So the first question I have for you, which I asked you before, but we didn't get a chance to actually finish some of our conversations, is why are you running right now at a time, especially at this time, because everyone it's so divided amongst Republicans and Democrats and independents. Why now?
It's a good question. It's one I've asked myself, actually, as I've started down this path, because it's one of these things that I have always felt strongly about, is that if you're going to participate in our democracy, you can stand on the sidelines and you can complain, or you can get in the middle of it and participate. And for me, I have always had a belief that I can give something back, that I can help. I think you have to have a little bit of ego if you feel like you can contribute and you can make a difference. And I do feel like I can make a difference, and probably more now than ever. When you talk about being divided, we are absolutely divided. And I look at that and think, you know what? I've spent my life working with people from different perspectives, and I think I can bring something to that in terms of working with and helping people come together and try to find some common ground in those kind of things. So I think actually more now than ever, you need someone who's willing to listen to different perspectives, willing to listen to different points of view, and willing to work with people to bring solutions together. There's a couple of groups in Congress out there right now. One's called No Labels, the other's called Problem Solver Caucus, and they are groups that kind of try to work across the aisle and get things done. And from my perspective, I just feel like that's something that we have to do better at, and it's something I feel like I have a background in and can help people do that. So that's kind of how, why I think I can help. What got me into the race, what made me decide this was something I wanted to do and felt really strongly that I needed to do, was when I looked at what was happening with the school budgets. And you and I have had this conversation about what's happening with the school budgets.
Yeah.
And when the schools are being asked to cut so many programs, part of what struck me was education is the greatest gift that we give to our kids. And so if we're not willing to invest in our children and in their future, particularly more so now than ever when they've got an uncertain future and lots of different challenges and things coming down the path, we have to be willing to do that. We have to invest in our children. And so when I saw what was happening there, I thought, that's really something that I want to get involved in. And the current occupant of the office, the current senator right now that we have, doesn't have the same attitude towards public schools, doesn't have the same belief in fully funding the public schools that I do, doesn't have the same outlook in terms of the role science plays in public schools and the need to make sure that we are investing. So that's what got me going down this path, and that's why I've decided that I'm going to run, because I just feel like if you believe in something, you have an opportunity, you have a responsibility to get involved, and so here I am.
Do you think it would be fair to say, because I believe this to be true, that just because you are in a particular party, Democratic Party, that it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't think for yourself? Because you seem to be the type of person in having these conversations that you feel passionate about a lot of different issues, but you're a very free thinker. So I think that that's always an interesting thing to me, is when you hear some of these people that may oppose what they believe you believe, they may not know that you actually believe it without talking to you about it. Have you noticed that you kind of feel like you're pigeonholed?
Well, unfortunately, I think today that's exactly what happens. And you talk about the divide. People assume that if you're a Republican, you carry all of the things that go with the Republican or traditionally beliefs that people assume. And if you're a Democrat, people say automatically you're in that camp and therefore you have all the beliefs. And we've become so divided that if you are, as I am, a Democrat, then people assume that everything that you don't like about Democrats, you are all of that and then some. And so the challenge is that you can't have the conversation. You can't really have the opportunity to listen and understand people's different perspectives and where they're coming from, because nobody wants to hear that. They think, we already heard what the Democratic position is or what the Republican position is, and therefore there's no room to have a conversation. Let me tell you a little story. I go back, I'm old enough to go back. I can remember when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, when Reagan was president, Tip O'Neill was in the House, and he was Speaker of the House.
Yes.
Strong Republican, strong Democrat. But the thing that, and granted this was a bygone era, and maybe I hold on to that as something we can go back to. but they had great conversations. They had strong opinions and they fought for the positions that they held, but they didn't attack each other. They didn't attack
There
their
was
character. They didn't attack their motives. What they did is they say, listen, this is the position I represent. This is why I believe what I believe. And they would try to find common ground. And then afterwards, they would go out and have a beer. And we've become so divided now that you can't get people who are the Democrats or Republicans to get in the same room together and have a conversation. And we're never going to move forward if we don't get people to sit down and listen and say, well, give me your perspective. Where are you coming from? Why did you come to that position? How did you get to that position? Let's talk about where we find common ground. And if we can't get to that, then all we're going to do is keep doing this. And people who expect people who are representing them to solve problems are going to be very disappointed, and it's going to continue to be frustrating. We have serious problems that require a coming together and a meeting of the minds and a conversation to solve. And we're not going to do it by just calling each other names.
Well, and I think that that's one of the unique things that you bring to this as well, is because you've had so many years in business, specifically real estate, where you are a problem solver. You have to deal with two opposing parties in many cases. You were involved in many arbitration cases. You sat on a lot of different boards. I think that that experience is maybe something that some of the other folks who are running or that are currently in office may not have that skill set.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, one of the things that coming from my past background as a broker and as someone who has worked with and taught, trained agents over the years, is that you take your ego out of it altogether, and you try to find out how do we solve the problem for our clients. Well, it's the same kind of thing here. How do I this isn't about me, and how do I take my ego out of this, and how do we have a conversation about solving some of the really critical issues that we have? And they require you to be able to ask and listen to other people's point of view. And I think, and so that's the background I do bring to this is the ability to listen and to negotiate and work to find common ground and common solutions to problems. That probably is the single biggest difference, I think, between myself and some of the other candidates, is the background I have and which allows me to do that.
So aside from the school issue that you've mentioned, what are some of the other issues that you feel passionate about in your district that you feel you could literally help make a change?
So I'll go back to schools for a second, because that's really where, for me, a lot of these things begin. And the reason I say that is education is the great equalizer. And what I mean by that is it gives everybody an opportunity. And I will admit it's not always a level playing field, but to the best that we can make it a level playing field, it gives kids an opportunity, and it gives them an opportunity to improve their lives, to be economically successful, but just personally successful, and to grow. And we have to fund that. So I look at two things: opportunity, that everybody gets their opportunity, and equity. And what I mean by equity is the equality. Everybody should be enabled to have that opportunity, regardless of their background, regardless of whether they are part of the LGBTQ community, whether they are Black or brown or Asian or whatever they happen to be, or an immigrant family. All of those people, who, regardless of their background, deserve the opportunity. And so I go back to schools, because that's that place where everybody goes through that. And so those are the things, from my perspective, is I see so much of it in that prism. How do we make sure that we're providing the equality of the opportunity to all of the kids? Because then we build on it from there. I've always been a believer that it's an old saying, but a rising tide raises all boats. And I believe that if we invest in our children, we invest in our schools, and we invest in the opportunity across the spectrum, that all kids have that opportunity, we as a society are better for that. And that's, I just absolutely believe that's my core, that's a fundamental that we have to work on. And so from my point of view, that's the equity and the opportunity are probably two of the things that resonate with me most.
Well, so what do you think, in your opinion, from what you have read and all of the stuff you've been a part of, that is putting us in the position still where we haven't obtained that yet? What's the missing piece?
Well, I think one of the things that, so for example, I've had some conversations with some moms that face some discrimination in schools. And part of the challenge is that we've never done well with people who are different. Regardless of who you are, whatever you are, there's always somebody who's different. And whatever those differences are, I think creates fear for people, because it's a fear of the unknown. And I don't know you as an individual. I now know you as a group. Well, that creates fear, and we don't do well with that as a society. And it's a sad thing. But you know, I grew up in an area that everybody remembers, at least from my background, when the Irish first came over, they were discriminated against. The English used to say no Irish need apply. Well, when the Italians came after the Irish treated the Italians the same way. We tend to do that with the next immigrant group or the next group. We tend to not be very welcoming, and we do that with people from an identity perspective as well. We tend not to be very welcoming, and it's a sad commentary, but we have to get better at that. We have to get better at embracing diversity, embracing people's what they bring in terms of the different backgrounds, and recognize that we're a better country and a better place for it. And so I don't know why we're not better, because we keep going down this same path, but I do think it's fear-based at the end of the day. I think people are afraid of things they don't understand, and unless you sit and talk to somebody who's different than you, it's easy to, you know, generalize, and I think that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it really is. So that's quite an undertaking, but I would agree with you that it does always start with the schools, because it's a great equalizer. I also think that it's great that you are willing to do these types of town hall meetings, because you want to get the word out. So when you're talking about this format that's new, what are your hopes with this? What would you like this to become?
So great question. I appreciate that. So my goal is to take these every Thursday at 7. And if you're just tuning in, by the way, I'm Richard Tucker, and I'm a candidate for the State Senate District 56. And what we're talking about is town halls and having an ongoing series of town halls. And so to your point, Tom, I'd like to each Thursday bring a different guest and a different topic, and really kind of drill into them and talk a little bit about what are their experiences, depending on what they happen to be, and how do we move the needle? How do we get better at that? And so I've got some people, some moms who have children in school, what some of the things that their children are experiencing, and how do we move forward, and how do we make that a better experience for them. I've got some people in the gay community talking about some of the issues around housing, because that was one of the issues that has come up to me in some of the conversations that I've had with folks, is how can we do a better job, again, around discrimination in housing. And so we've got some conversations around that. So we're going to continue to bring in different people from different backgrounds. I'm going to have somebody in from Everytown for gun safety, because we want to talk a little bit about some of those kind of issues as well. And so that's really the format. And hopefully over the next 12 weeks, we'll have an opportunity to have some pretty good conversations, and then allow people to ask questions as well, and use it as a Q&A, because I'm not going to be able to be in any kind of a forum that allows for a broader perspective. So this is a way that we can kind of try to do that sort of thing.
But they can always, if they have questions for you, they can reach out to you personally through Facebook or your webpage, correct?
Absolutely. Or my email address, which is tuckerforminnesota at gmail.com, or go to the website. You're absolutely correct. And thanks for reminding people to do that. So yes, I would love to have questions. I'd love to be able to answer people's questions, but I'd love to be able to have that as part of that. And I don't know, and I may be doing this wrong, Tom, in terms of seeing questions, but I'm not seeing any, and that may be me just not knowing how to use this
Well,
technology, and I'm working my way through it.
and that's the growing process of this, because I've been struggling myself with this as well, as you know. And so for any of you folks watching, if Richard doesn't answer your question tonight, please reach out to him directly and ask whatever questions you have, because he will answer them. We're still struggling to sort all of this technology stuff out, because Facebook used to allow us to do this, then they took it away, and now all of a sudden they put it back again. But there's so many more things to have to go through to get it to this point that this platform's working better. So for those of you that have questions, please reach out. Richard, to somebody that's going to stumble across this, us talking,
Right.
just a regular person with a job that lives in the community and wants to know, say, because everything is so divided, why should they vote for you? What do you think you can do to help ease some of the fear and anger and different things that we see going on in the community?
That's a tall task, because there's a lot of anger and a lot of frustration going on in the community, and obviously we had some of that going on before we ran into a global pandemic, and that certainly changes all of the paradigms. But I think one of the things that you have to think about, and this is something that I've thought a lot about recently, is how do we achieve balance? Because that's really what people are saying. Is there's some people say open everything up, and there's some people say close everything down, and how do we achieve balance? I mean, there's untold economic impact because of this. And I know people who have lost jobs. I know people who own restaurants who have had to close them. And that's a tremendous economic burden, and to them personally, and then to the community. And how do we move forward with that? And there are no easy answers. And anybody who tells you that it's either all A or all B, I think you're crazy. It's how do we reach a balance that respects and understands both sides of the equation. And I think that's, as we go forward, part of this whole process of just listening to people and understanding the anxiety that people have. You may not be able to solve all the problems, because quite frankly, there's some significant and serious problems that are brought up by this. And there's no simple solution to that. But if we're not willing to have a dialogue around that, we're never going to move forward. And I think it's critical that we have to be able to say, you have to at least understand the anxiety of people who've lost their jobs or are going paycheck to paycheck. You have to understand the anxiety of the person who says, listen, I've got underlying health conditions and I'm very concerned. I don't want to catch this, and I don't want to bring it back to my parents, or I don't want to have my children get it. And so that's legitimate as well. And so how do you create the balance between those two things? And again, Facebook is one of those places where it's a little scary territory, because there's a lot of people calling each other names out there. And if you're on one side or the other, there's a lot of attacking going on, not very much listening going on, and a lot of that. And I think, unfortunately, as we move forward, if we're not better at that part of it, of listening to each other and recognizing and understanding and empathizing, we're going to be in more trouble than we already are as a result of this pandemic. And so, as I look to next year, which is the year that I would be in office if all goes according to plan, we're going to have some challenges, because there's going to be tremendous pressure to spend more money, and there's going to be tremendous pressure to collect taxes from, and yet we have an economy that you really are going to be difficult to do that, because people are going to need a break. They're going to need to get their businesses under their feet, and there are businesses that don't even exist anymore. So how do we balance all that? And I think those are the challenges. It goes back to how do we set our priorities?
And don't you think, too, that it kind of goes back to that old saying about, if you want to change the world, look in the mirror and start with yourself? And I think I think it's really important for people to also understand that this vote counts, that you don't just go and show up at the poll and you vote for the person you want to be president, because the president has nothing to do with what's going on locally in your county, in your district, and that these are important elections because people like Richard can help truly make a change. But if you don't like what's going on right now, if you don't effectively change it, it's going to stay the same, regardless of who ends up in the White House. Is that not true?
No, I think, what I'm focused on, I can't impact what happens in DC. What I'm focused on is Minnesota. What I'm focused on is what we can do here. What are the challenges? And we certainly have plenty of them here. And so that's my goal, is to do that. And thank you for bringing that up. But there's an August primary. That primary is August 11th. But and obviously we want people to vote on that day. But you can vote early, absentee balloting. You can go to the Secretary of State's office. You can log in and register, and they will send you a vote or send you an application for a ballot. And so I would encourage people to do that. You can start that process now. They'll mail that to you. You can fill it out as long as you get it in before August 10th. Then you can do that, or you can go in person. Starting June 28th to August 10th, you can go in person and vote in a primary. But you're absolutely correct. If you don't participate in the vote, if you aren't willing to actually go and do that, then you lose your right, in my opinion, to criticize, because you have to participate. And so I would encourage everybody to participate and to vote, and particularly in the primary, because I need your vote and I need your support, and I'm looking forward to that. So we said we would keep these to about 20 minutes. We're a little bit over that, Tom, and so I don't want to make this too long for folks, but I do want to say we will do this every Thursday, 7 o'clock, and I will let people know in advance who the guest will be next Thursday, and we'll continue to have these conversations and dialogues. But if you had questions, you weren't able to get them to me this evening, please don't hesitate. Send me them email at Tucker for Minnesota Senate, Tucker for MN Senate at gmail.com, or go to the website and let me know what your thoughts are. And certainly would love your support and your donations as well, because I need to be able to continue to do the things that we're going to do. And unfortunately, I find out in politics, nothing is free. So anyway, thank you all very much. I appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. Look forward to the opportunity over the next 10 to 12 weeks to continue to have these town halls. Tom, thank you very much for hosting tonight or having the conversation with me, and look forward to continue to do that as well. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it, and hope to see you next week.
Bye.